Supervisor ignored critical alerts while patients waited. One certification rule and receipts flipped the room and forced her off the console. Hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell. Real hospital revenge stories with receipts are coming right up. On paper, our hospital network operations room was a quiet heart, but at night it breathed like a machine. Cold dust air, burned coffee, fans sowing a thin metallic hum through the racks. We were page acknowledgers, queue bumpers, tape monkeys, professionals at not letting delay become harm. Into that room walked Karen, seniority made supervisor, not skill made, with a smile like a warning label and a policy voice that turned every suggestion into a coup. After a merger clipped her title, she wore the 24/7 rotation like a grudge and strangled anything she did not understand. The morning my promotion email went out, she leaned over the console so close I smelled toner and whisper sweat and said, "You will fail." I kept my eyes on the dashboard and answered, "We succeed or we learn." Minutes later, the console threw the red banner we all knew. Flip the interface, clear the lab results queue, verify the feed. Her cursor drifted. Celebrity gossip scrolled. The clock ticked. Somewhere above us, a care team stared at a blank panel waiting for numbers that never came. I took a screenshot of the frozen queue, printed an incident stub, and slid both into a folder tab labeled incidents so the moment would not dissolve into hallway fog. I felt the space shrink around the blinking cursor and heard myself say, very evenly, "Acknowledge." She lifted a shoulder. I knew we had crossed a line I could not uncross, and the line was not only hers. The ceiling vents hissed. The badge printer clicked. The runbook binder's spine creaked when I pulled it open to the incident page and slapped a sticky flag on the margin. Then I waited. The procedure was simple enough to live on a laminated card. Acknowledge the alert, bump the interface, watch for flow, call if the queue did not clear. We were the narrow throat between analysis and action. That night, a cardiac patient upstairs was being prepped, and the white blood cell count never arrived. I am not a clinician, but cause and effect does not need a degree. It just needs a clock and a threshold. The next afternoon, a nurse manager, voice papercut calm, said on the phone, "Whoever sat on that queue cost us options." HR reviewed and chose the soft phrasing, "No direct causation." As if smoke can be ignored because you did not light the match. I went home at dawn, washed server grit from my hands, and stared at the mirror while the bathroom fan ticked like a worn bearing. If the policy maze would not defend patients from incompetence, I would become fluent in the maze until it did. First, proof sharp enough to survive 1,000 excuses. Second, a lever no one could wiggle free of. I opened a fresh notebook, wrote the date in block letters, taped down the printed incident stub, and underlined the word receipts twice, because the house had already filled with smoke and we were still debating definitions. I walked the pre-dawn parking lot and listened to the sodium lights buzz while my phone vibrated with the HR decision email. The subject line read, "No direct causation." I printed the message, highlighted the phrasing, and slid it behind the incidents tab with the screenshot so the file would tell the story without me. In the notebook I wrote what we should have done, then drew a small square and labeled it off-ramp because even villains deserve a door out before you pull the fire alarm. The mirror fogged. I wiped a streak with my wrist and practiced a sentence I would need soon. "I am here for safety, not spectacle." So I bored holes through granite. Every skipped acknowledgement, every cue left choking while she printed recipes, every runbook step she treated as optional became timestamped, ticketed, screenshot, signed. Not petty gotchas, but life safety breaches documented like a lab protocol. HR has its ritual verbal warning, first written, second, final, and she had found a counter-ritual. File a harassment complaint, trigger a 6-month investigation, freeze discipline until the statute of patience expires. 6 months later, the finding would read unsubstantiated. The warnings would sour like milk, and the clock would reset. Good texts burned out or transferred. Proposals died in committee because any friction might become her next complaint. I stopped dreaming about firing Karen and started thinking about standards. Something objective, humane, sharp. Punishment would never repair the room. Competence could. One night, under the thin buzz of the KVM, I sketched a clean diagram. A baseline certification for the role, not Cisco deep hazing, just a real floor CompTIA Network Plus with paid study time, materials, a voucher and a retake, and 8 months of runway. Frame it as modernization tied to a raise, so the choice reads, do this and rise, not do this or else. I saved the proposal as a PDF called Practice Uplift, printed 2 copies, and slid them under the CIO's door before doubt could talk me out of it, heart hammering like a misfired fan. I wrote the budget like a recipe card, books, labs, proctoring, a retake cushion, paid time on the clock, and an equity guardrail so night shift would not eat unpaid hours to compete with days. I added a line that said raises tied to passing are permanent, not hush money, and another that said the requirement lives in every role description, including mine. Red tape argued in fluorescent rooms for what felt like seasons. HR, legal, compensation, the director, the CIO, each with a stamp, each turning May into shall and back again while the projector fan hummed like a tired bee. I put the requirement in my own job description so nobody could claim I had carved myself a private escape hatch. At last, the signatures landed. We posted a schedule with carved-out study blocks, funded off-site classes, created a Slack channel, pinned lab sims and flashcards by the time clock, and booked an on-site proctoring window so travel could not be the excuse. I sat in study huddles after shift smelling dry eraser and cold coffee, answered subnetting riddles until the numbers felt like nursery rhymes, and booked my own exam for 2 a.m. at a test center that clicked like an empty library. I passed and brought bagels because wins should echo. The room exhaled. Veterans relearned curiosity. Newer hires found their stride. Escalations dropped because the first line finally had teeth. Karen circled the effort like a hawk that had forgotten how to fly. Real engineers don't need multiple choice trivia. She sniffed, then booked late and walked into the booth smirking. She came back tight, then loud. Unfair questions. We pulled the objective breakdown and offered targeted help. She waved it off. I've been here longer than all of you. The second wave passed and posted pay bumps like newborn photos. Karen booked a retake, skipped 3 study blocks to lecture someone about respect, and failed harder. She promised HR would handle the conspiracy, filed the familiar complaint, and waited for the maze to bend again. It didn't. Requirements are deaf to drama, and the clock kept ticking toward a third attempt she swore she did not need. HR, allergic to appeals claims, offered a fairness cushion. A third try plus extra paid study hours and a fresh lab sim license. I taped subnetting mnemonics to the fridge in the break room, dropped a sign-up for one-on-one clinics, and sent a quiet DM that read, "Happy to help." She declined in public. Meanwhile, the NOC transformed in ways you could feel with your skin. Acknowledgements hit in seconds, not minutes. Runbooks grew muscles because people finally understood why the steps existed. Karen performed for the room, calling our program harassment by spreadsheet. The irony, the policy lifted everyone but her. On test morning, she arrived with bright lipstick and the confidence of someone who has never been told no by a system she could game. She returned pale, then red. Fail worse than before. By afternoon, the complaint was filed, boilerplate and weary. This time, it did not pause anything. HR sent a calendar line that read role requirements meeting, Friday, 10 o'clock. I printed the invite, slid it behind the incidents tab, and wrote in my pocket notebook, "We will keep it boring and humane." The server room hummed a steadier chord. Someone wiped the console glass until it squeaked. I tuned the study huddles until they felt like warm-ups before a shift. 10 minutes of flashcards, 5 of a lab sim, 1 minute to breathe. I printed the Slack thread, clipped it into the binder, and set the binder by the door so I would not forget it for Friday. The hallway smelled like floor wax and cool air. The badge printer thumped once like a heartbeat, and I stacked the binder's tabs. Incidents, practice, until the colors felt like a plan. The conference room smelled like baked dust and dry markers. HR set a recorder on the table. Legal clicked a pen. My binder waited with tabs like traffic lights. Incidents, practice. For the record, I said, we are here for safety, not spectacle. The HR partner nodded and slid a printed agenda toward us. Acknowledge gaps, policy review, role requirements, options. Karen arrived with perfume like powdered sugar and a smile that never touched her eyes. This is harassment, she opened. I placed 3 artifacts in a neat row. The screenshot of the frozen queue, the HR email with no direct causation, highlighted, and the signed roll call log from the night our count never arrived upstairs. Off-ramp, I said, tapping a small square I had drawn on the agenda margin. Option 1, pass the baseline within the timeline, keep the console, enjoy the raise. Option 2, move to a documentation, roll off the live queue with the same base pay while you study. Option 3, decline both and we follow the posted policy. Legal adjusted glasses. Is this requirement universal? Yes, I answered, and slid my own certificate copy forward, toner still smelling faintly sweet. Karen laughed without humor. I have seniority. HR set a single sheet between us, role acknowledgement with a blank for a signature. The badge printer in the hall thunked once like a heartbeat. The policy is the same for everyone, HR said. I nudged the pen across the table and watched it touch the paper like a test of gravity. We spent the week turning study into muscle memory. I posted a laminated checklist near the console. Acknowledge, bump, verify, call. In big type where tired eyes land. Carla from Knights led subnetting flash drills. I handled ticket triage scenarios. The CIO stopped by with a box of vouchers that smelled like cardboard and relief. The Slack channel filled with quiet victories. Lab sim cracked. Masking rule finally clicked. And I printed the thread to pin above the time clock so practice would not evaporate at shift change. Karen hovered in doorways narrating reasons the baseline was beneath her, then dimmed me a single line. Offer me a title and I'll consider it. I replied in daylight, attaching the posted role description and the compensation memo so the conversation had a spine. HR scheduled a check-in. The invite arrived with a subject line that sounded like a landing. Progress and plan. I brought the sign-in sheet for study blocks, edges warm from a cheap laminator, and a short list of open tickets that had cleared faster since we started drills. You are moving the floor, the nurse manager said over speaker, voice softer, paper rustling in the background. Upstairs notices. After the call, HR slid an envelope across a desk to Karen. Written summary, options restated, deadlines in black and white. She folded it once, twice, and did not sit. On deadline morning, the test center keyboards clacked like rain on tin. I waited in the lobby with a thermos of stale coffee and a copy of her study outline, just in case pride softened. She breezed past without a glance, kissed her badge to the reader, and vanished behind a door that sighed shut. The proctor's clock ticked and the hallway smelled like rubber flooring and static. When she emerged, her face carried two stories, anger and fear, and the printout in her hand carried the truth. Not yet. Appeal, she said to HR over the phone, already walking. Hostile program. Requirement is posted and supported. HR answered, voice neutral. Off-ramp remains open. 2 hours later, a grievance landed in inboxes like a dull hammer. Legal acknowledged receipt with one paragraph and no drama. That afternoon, the CIO sent me a one-liner. Keep the room boring. We did. A panicked on-call escalated a stuck radiology batch. A new hire followed the checklist like a ladder and called it once when the second bump failed. I attached the healthy run afterward. 3 tidy screenshots. Timestamps in the corner like fingerprints. A note that read, flow restored, calls placed. The air in the NOC felt cooler, like someone had cracked a window. The fans shifted from strain to purr. Late that night, HR's meeting request arrived. Role requirements, next steps, Friday, 10 a.m., and the subject line didn't wink. I slid the invite behind the incidents tab, pressed the binder flat with my palm, and exhaled. HR's office smelled like lemon cleaner and careful language. A union rep sat to Karen's left, arms folded. HR set the recorder on. Legal opened a folder whose corners were already softened by use. We honor seniority, HR began, and we honor posted requirements. 3 paths remain. They read them slowly, then slid a prepared reassignment packet across the table. Documentation librarian, clinical exposure reduced, same base, study time carved into the grid, reapply to the console after passing. This is a demotion, Karen said, even as her hand hovered over the packet. This is a safety rail, legal replied, and it is temporary by your choice. The union rep cleared his throat. You keep pay. You lose the console for now. Paper made a soft sound as she turned the first page. Her perfume smelled less like sugar and more like something that wanted to be a wall. Or, HR added, you may decline and separate under policy. My binder felt heavy in my lap. I slid one more artifact forward. A letter from the nurse manager thanking the NOC for the new speed. Ink still a little shiny. The room is better, I said. That is the point. Karen signed the reassignment line with a short, annoyed stroke. HR countersigned, stamped the date, and handed me a copy for the file. In the hall, the badge office cut a fresh access profile that no longer opened the console. The laminate smelled warm and a little sad. On my way back to the racks, my phone buzzed. Audit scheduled, external, next month. The subject line felt like a bell. Good, let the sunlight in. You could feel the change in your bones. Acknowledgments hit like reflex. The runbook lost its shaky italics and grew into a voice. Upstairs, the lab panels populated on time so often that silence became a kind of music. The nurse manager sent a second note, short, gracious, that I slid behind the practice tab. Options protected by timely data. The CIO took our practice uplift and made it network-wide. A memo in plainer English than I thought possible hit inboxes at dawn. Baseline required for console roles, study paid, raises permanent, I watched veterans clap rookies on shoulders at 2 in the morning when a lab sim finally clicked. Someone brought in cinnamon rolls that tasted like a holiday on a Tuesday. Karen's new desk filled with binders. She wrote sharp, useful updates to the runbook. As it turned out, her eye for control found a good wall to lean on. One afternoon she stopped at the NOC door with a stack of laminated quick cards that smelled like dry ink and plastic and said, "Not quite looking at me. Put these where eyes land." I did. We were not friends. We were a safer room. I still think about the night that started this and the patient upstairs, and I am not proud of the harm that almost grew from delay. I am proud of the line we kept. No spectacle, no shortcuts, no one above the floor. If you ever face a room where myth outranks receipts, pick verbs over villains, keep your off-ramp visible, and build a ladder others can climb. What would you have done in my place? And where would you draw the line between empathy and boundaries? Drop your take in the comments, and thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story, and above all, stay awesome.